Hey friends, how are you? I wanted to pop on and talk about something that's come forward for me, and it's come up again and again. And when things come up like that, I like to share because I feel like maybe there's something out in the collective that is asking about it. Maybe, we can talk about it and have it be helpful. So it's the whole idea of wanting to make change, wanting to make positive change for yourself in a way that feels good and right. And as someone who's been in the wellness industry for 18 years, I, of course, have not only thought about the idea of making change for myself, but I've also worked with hundreds of clients and dealt directly with the idea of wanting to make positive change. And what I found over these many years is that making change is very challenging. It's really difficult. And for a time, I didn't understand why. I could not figure out what the deal was and why it was so challenging for not only my clients to make change, but for me to make change, meaningful and lasting change. So I want to bring two things forward from my research that I've integrated into my work and that has been incredibly illuminating for me personally and for the clients that I work with. The first is called the paradoxical theory of change. Stay with me. I know it's a lot of big words. You might want to zone out. Stay with me. The paradoxical theory of change is a Gestalt theory put forward by a researcher named Arnold Bieser. And how he describes the paradoxical theory of change is like this. He says, the idea of the paradoxical theory of change occurs when one becomes what he is, not when he tries to become what he is not. So to paraphrase, the more you actively try to change something about yourself, that change yourself into something that you are not, the more likely it is that you are going to stay the same. That's the paradox. The paradox is when you stop trying to force yourself to change and instead lovingly accept where you are. In that space of lovingly accepting where you are, that will allow you to be in a state that will grow and be more able to change. So the paradox is when you're trying to change something about yourself, when you come at your change from that place versus coming from a place of deep acceptance, the results or the way you set yourself up, you're more amenable to actually making positive change. So this landed with me in the middle of a yoga teacher training because it was something that had been bouncing around my brain like a big question with a big question mark. And I felt like there was something missing in the research. And when I learned about the paradoxical theory of change, it literally just landed in my body like a lightning bolt. It made sense to me. It made real sense to me that the idea of change, real, sustainable, lasting, positive change, doesn't come when you sit in that space of, I hate this thing about myself and I want to change it, versus when you can accept and deeply love where you are. That is the place where you can actually start to make positive change. So within this training from Yoga North, they brought forward this incredible resource that has just been magical for me. I use it all the time and I want to share it with you. And it's this book called Making a Change for Good by a Zen teacher. Her name is Cherry Huber. And it's just an incredible book. It's very complex philosophy, but she writes it in such a way that it makes it super accessible. I highly recommend this book. It takes the idea of you wanting to make change and helps you to kind of see the voices that come up for you inside when you try to make change. Because often what I see is this cycle of wanting to make change. Oh, I should make change. Generally, it starts with a should statement. I should make this change. And that should comes from a place of deep dissatisfaction with something about yourself. So I'm going to make this change. And then you try to make this change from that place. And on the other end of it, or what comes up is there's often an inner child voice or an inner teenager voice that comes forward and is like, no, I don't want to make change. And then back into the cycle we go. Versus coming at your change from a place of deep self-compassion and deep self-acceptance, which is what opens the windows and doors and starts that flow of fresh energy towards making positive change, sustainable change, real change, because it's coming from a place of deep, loving acceptance. It frees you up to be able to. The motivation is different. It's not because I want to change something I hate about myself, but instead you're adding to your life. You're enriching your life. You're making positive change in your life. That's a very different place to come from than I hate this thing about myself. So what I have found anecdotally in myself and in with clients is that when you can weave in learning about self-acceptance and learning about self-compassion, is that it frees you up to make positive change because you are coming from a very different place. So let me know how this lands with you, because this is very different than, honestly, what most people teach. Most people teach, you want to get to here, you got to make this change and try this thing and do this thing. And what I try to teach in whole is that the positive change will come, and all of that will come when you zero base and come all the way back to deep self-compassion and acceptance. That's where change begins. I know, it's a totally different deal. Here's the thing. When you can start to look at the sum of the changes that you want to make, in my world, that tends to come up in the size of your pants. It tends to come up in the size or the number on the scale, or something about your physical body. A couple of things. Number one, I want you to know that this is a learned response. This is not a natural, normal response to be dissatisfied about something in your life and have it go right to, I got to change something about the size of my body. That is that's a learned response. That is not a natural reaction. And it comes from systems of oppression. And once you can kind of make that connection between making change and where it comes from and your why around it, you can start to unpack all of that. And then you can start to question why do you want to make change? Because it's okay to make change. I want to be really clear. It's all right to make change. And it's okay to want to make change. Just be really clear about where it's coming from and what your motivation is. Yeah? All right. Let me know what you think about this. I would love to hear. Talk to you later. See ya.